Between 2020 and 2024, 1,460,000 people left California for other states. You've probably heard the explanation: taxes. California's 12.3% state income tax, the highest in the nation, is supposedly driving everyone out. It has become conventional wisdom, a talking point repeated so often that most people assume it is true. But the research shows something else entirely. It connects to a crisis happening underground that most Californians do not even know exists. While everyone debates whether people are leaving because of politics, weather, or cost of living, the ground beneath the Central Valley is sinking at nearly 1 foot per year. These two problems, the exodus and the sinking ground, are not separate. They are the same spiral. If you find stuff like this valuable, subscribe. We break down how geography shapes where people live and why. The real reason people leave. So, if it's not taxes, what is it? The answer is simpler and more brutal than anyone wants to admit: housing. A family needs $221,000 in annual income to qualify for a mortgage on a median California home. California's median household income is $102,000. That's not a gap you can bridge with budgeting. That's an impossibility built into the structure of the market. Only 16% of California homes are affordable to California buyers. Nationally, that number is over 50%. A 2021 poll found that 1/3 of Californians had seriously considered leaving the state, and the overwhelming reason they cited was housing prices. Think about what that means in practice. Teachers, nurses, engineers, the human capital that California needs to function are doing the math and realizing they will never own a home here, so they leave. California to Texas migration now runs 2.6 to 1. For every person moving from Texas to California, more than 2.5 are going the other direction. But this raises an obvious question. California is one of the wealthiest places on Earth. It has the 5th largest economy of any nation. Why can't it just build more housing and solve the problem? The math that doesn't work. Here is where the numbers become unforgiving. California builds roughly 100,000 housing units per year. Economists calculate the state needs 210,000 just to keep pace with population and household formation. This is not new, it has been happening for over 30 years. The cumulative result is a shortage of 3.5 million homes. Not units that would be nice to have. Units that mathematically need to exist for the market to function. The question is why they cannot build faster. And the answer is structural. Getting a housing permit approved in San Francisco takes between 627 and 861 days. Nearly 2 years just to get permission to build. Zoning restrictions, environmental reviews, community opposition, and litigation create bottlenecks at every stage. Each project faces a gauntlet of requirements that add costs and years to the timeline. The result is predictable. Housing costs have grown 78% since 2020. Wages grew 25% over the same period. The gap between what people earn and what housing costs is widening every year, not narrowing. This is not a policy failure that better leadership could fix overnight. The system itself is structurally incapable of producing affordable housing at the scale California needs. The exodus is not a choice people are making because they prefer Texas weather. It is math. When the numbers do not work, people leave. But none of this explains the sinking ground. That connection runs through something most people have never heard of, and it is about to change everything. The ground beneath your feet. While Californians debate housing policy in legislative hearings and city council meetings, something is happening beneath the Central Valley that will reshape the state's future more dramatically than any law ever could. The ground is sinking. Not metaphorically, physically. In the worst areas, it drops up to 2 inches per month. The technical term is subsidence, and the United States Geological Survey called it one of the single largest human alterations to Earth's surface. Between 1925 and 1970, 4,000 square miles of the San Joaquin Valley sank into itself. That's half the size of New Jersey. Some spots dropped 30 feet in total. If you could go back in time and stand in certain fields, you would be looking up at where the surface is today. The cause was groundwater pumping. California's Central Valley sits above massive underground aquifers, layers of water-saturated rock and sediment that accumulated over millennia. When surface water was scarce, farmers pumped from below. The more they pumped, the more the ground compressed. By the 1980s, the crisis seemed solved. State and federal aqueducts brought surface water from Northern California, reducing the need for groundwater. The pumping slowed and the sinking largely stopped. Engineers congratulated themselves on fixing the problem. Then the drought from 2012 to 2016 hit. Surface water allocations were cut, farmers went back to pumping, and the sinking started again, faster than before. The physics of permanence. Here's what makes this different from any other infrastructure problem California faces. Underground, there are layers of clay and silt mixed with the water-bearing rock. These layers act like a sponge. When water fills them, they stay expanded. When you pump the water out, the sponge compresses under the weight of everything above it. But unlike a real sponge, it never rebounds. The tiny spaces between particles collapse permanently. Once those layers compact, the storage capacity is destroyed forever. You can pump water back into the aquifer, but the aquifer itself has shrunk. There is simply less room for water to exist. Mehdi Namati at UC Riverside described it this way: it is like a sponge. If you squeeze water out and never let it soak again, it flattens and hardens. That is what is happening underground. It is like permanently shrinking your savings account. Once compaction occurs, some of the groundwater storage capacity is lost forever. Every inch the ground sinks is an inch of water California can never store again. The damage is not something that heals when the drought ends. It is permanent, irreversible, and it is accelerating during every dry year. This means every year of continued overpumping does not just borrow against the future, it shrinks California's future water supply permanently. The state is cannibalizing its own infrastructure in ways that cannot be undone. Infrastructure that can't keep up. But the sinking isn't just destroying aquifers, it's destroying the canals that supply water to 27 million people. California's water infrastructure was built on the assumption that the ground would stay where it was. The California Aqueduct, the Fayette-Kern Canal, and the Delta-Mendota Canal are gravity-fed systems. Water flows downhill through concrete channels that were carefully graded to maintain just the right slope. When the ground sinks unevenly, that slope changes. Water pools where it shouldn't. Flow rates drop. Capacity disappears. The Fayette-Kern Canal has lost 60% of its capacity in the worst sections. The California Aqueduct has lost over 20%. These aren't minor efficiency losses. They represent billions of gallons of water that simply can't reach the farms and cities that depend on them. The state spent $326 million and 10 years repairing a 10-mile stretch of canal. Engineers raised the walls, regraded the floor, and restored flow capacity. Within months of finishing, the section sank another foot. The repairs literally cannot keep pace with the collapse. You fix one stretch while the next stretch sinks. You raise the walls while the ground drops beneath them. It is not a problem you can throw money at because the problem keeps moving. Total estimated repair costs now exceed $500 million. But that number assumes the sinking stops. If it does not, no amount of repair funding will ever catch up. The law that allows collapse. So the state must have a plan, right? In 2014, California passed the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, known as SGMA. It was supposed to end the crisis. Here's how it works. Local basins form groundwater sustainability agencies. Those agencies write groundwater sustainability plans. The plans establish targets for bringing pumping into balance with recharge. Basins that are critically overdrafted have until 2040 to achieve sustainability. It sounds responsible. It sounds like government doing what government should do, but there is a problem buried in the definitions. The Sustainable Groundwater Management Act's definition of sustainability still allows groundwater levels to drop to thresholds that will destroy 30% of California's drinking water wells. That equals 9,285 domestic wells, the wells individual households depend on, projected to fail. Plus another 1,168 public supply wells that serve communities. Even if the law works perfectly, even if every basin meets every deadline, the outcome is still thousands of wells going dry. The solution has failure baked into its definition of success. The law does not prevent catastrophe, it schedules it. Where it all connects. And this is where the exodus, the housing crisis, and the sinking ground stop being three separate problems and become one feedback loop. Water scarcity drives up farming costs in the Central Valley. When wells run dry, farmers either pay more to drill deeper or watch their crops die. Either way, the economics of agriculture shift. Land that was profitable becomes marginal. Land that was marginal becomes worthless. At the same time, homes built on subsiding ground are losing value. Foundations crack as the earth shifts unevenly beneath them. Research shows that homes in subsiding areas have lost between $6,000 and $16,000 in value per property. Aggregate losses across affected regions approach $2 billion. Who wants to buy a home when the foundation might crack? Who wants to invest in a community where wells might run dry without warning? The uncertainty itself becomes a driver of decline. Meanwhile, as housing costs push population to other states, California's tax base erodes. 1.46 million people leaving means 1.46 million fewer taxpayers. That's less revenue for schools, for roads, for infrastructure repair. The $500 million needed to fix the canals has to come from somewhere, and that somewhere is shrinking. Fewer workers means less economic activity. Less economic activity means less tax revenue. Less tax revenue means crumbling infrastructure that cannot be repaired. And crumbling infrastructure means more people looking at the numbers and deciding to leave. Each crisis accelerates the others. The exodus weakens the state's ability to respond to the water crisis. The water crisis undermines property values and drives more people out. The housing crisis pushes middle-class families to states where their income can actually buy a home. It's not three problems running in parallel. It's one spiral pulling California downward. Most Californians have no idea it's happening. The subsidence is invisible from the surface. The aquifer losses do not make headlines. The wells that fail are in rural areas that do not drive news cycles. But the spiral keeps turning. The clock nobody's watching. There is a specific deadline approaching that changes everything, and almost nobody outside water policy circles knows it exists. The Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, known as SGMA, sets a sustainability deadline for critically overdrafted basins in 2040. 15 years to transform water usage across California's agricultural heartland. 15 years to bring pumping into balance with recharge. 15 years to somehow find a way to stop the sinking. Current progress is glacial. Many groundwater sustainability agencies are behind schedule. Some basins submitted plans late. Others are revising their plans after receiving critical feedback from state regulators. The state has backstop enforcement authority. Technically, it can step in if local agencies fail, but that authority is untested and politically explosive. Nobody knows what happens if the state actually tries to use it. To stop the sinking, California needs to recharge its aquifers with 220 billion gallons of water annually. The amount of surplus surface water available in an average year is 7 billion gallons. That is a 97% shortfall. Not a gap you can close with efficiency improvements. A gap that may require fundamentally rethinking what California agriculture looks like. Achieving real sustainability may require permanently fallowing 500,000 acres of farmland, taking it out of production forever. The San Joaquin Valley produces 1/3 of America's vegetables and 2/3 of its fruits and nuts. This is not California trivia. This is national food security. The almonds, the pistachios, the tomatoes, the lettuce, all of it depends on water that is running out. Rural communities built around agriculture face an existential transition. Small towns whose economies depend on farms and farm workers will need to become something else. Nobody has explained how that is supposed to work. Nobody has funded it. Nobody has even seriously planned for it. The deadline exists. The plan to meet it does not. The quiet emergency. So what does running out of time actually mean? It means 1.46 million people have already left, and the conditions driving them out are not improving. It means housing costs have disconnected from wages in ways that 30 years of policy have failed to fix. It means the ground beneath the Central Valley is sinking at rates measured in inches per month, and every inch represents water storage lost forever. It means infrastructure is failing faster than repairs can keep pace, no matter how much money gets thrown at the problem. It means a law designed to solve the crisis has failure built into its own definition of success. It means 30% of drinking water wells are marching toward failure, not because the system broke, but because the system is working exactly as designed. The phrase running out of time is not rhetorical. You can measure it in moving trucks heading east on Interstate 10. You can measure it in inches of ground lost beneath fields that once fed the nation. You can measure it in wells going dry one by one in communities where nobody in Sacramento is paying attention. Everyone wants to know why people are leaving California. They debate taxes and politics and weather and crime, but the answer is simpler than that and more frightening. The answer is under their feet.